Hello and welcome. Today, I am going to show you a biographical survival film titled 127 Hours. The film begins with scenes of crowded races, sports competitions, and trains. We see that the world is moving at full speed. Before we meet Aron, he prepares all the gear he will need for the day. The screen indicates that it is Saturday. It is still dark outside, and he is hurrying to finish. He cannot find his Swiss Army knife, even though it's just within reach in a cabinet. He barely misses it with his hand and leaves without it. He fills his water bottle, grabs a few energy bars, and literally runs out. He jumps into his car and plays music as he drives through the desert. He explains to his camcorder that all he needs is darkness, music, and himself. He stops in front of what looks like a small campsite. However, he jumps into the back of his truck and lies down to sleep. In the morning, Aron wakes up and hops on his bike. We understand that he is full of energy and loves adventure and the outdoors. He rides through the desert, doing wheelies and jumping over obstacles in the road. He falls sometimes but finds it funny and keeps riding. He attaches his camcorder to the handlebars of his bike and stops regularly to talk to it and update his audience on his progress. Except for a few brief moments, Aron is completely alone. The camera is almost his excuse to tell us what is happening and to communicate with someone. Aron decides to ride to a place called Blue John Canyon. He rides as fast as he can and, along the way, parks his bike and starts to climb. He climbs for a few minutes when he hears two girls passing by and decides to greet them. Their names are Christy and Megan, and they are completely lost. They're looking at a map but cannot really decide where to go. Aron says hello and tells them he can help. He asks them where they want to go, then explains that he can take them there. He starts walking, but Aron says that if they are willing, he knows a great place to climb. She finds him a bit odd, but rather cute, so they agree. We then see Aron, Megan, and Christy climbing in a narrow crevice. He lets go of the wall and falls into the really tight fissure. It is quite a scary scene, but he eventually lands in a beautiful lake. Christy jumps in, then Megan, and they all have a great time diving into the water. Aron records everything to have a memory of the places his life takes him. He swims for an hour or two, and then starts walking. They eventually part ways. Aron asks if he will see them again, and she replies that she is having a party the next evening. He can find them by looking for a giant inflatable Scooby-Doo at the entrance to the party. He tells them he will be there and leaves. The girls laugh among themselves because it is clear Christy liked Aron a lot. Aron begins to climb alone and comes across a beautiful canyon to scale. He jumps over a branch and enters inside. He climbs for a few minutes and then sees a large drop with a rock above. As he ventures in, the rock dislodges and Aron falls with it. He drops about 5 meters into the canyon along with the rock. In this fall, his arm gets pinned between the rock and the side of the canyon. He is injured, but the bigger problem is that he cannot free his arm. Aron tries to pull it from all angles, but has no luck. He attempts to kick it free, but it does not move. He pulls very hard on his arm, but it is completely useless. He ends up screaming at the top of his lungs for help, but the desert is vast, and the fissure is tiny. He is completely isolated and alone. He tries to think of everything useful he might have with him. He unpacks his bag and assesses the situation. He tries to use his small Swiss Army knife to chip away at the rock, but it's futile. He drops it into a small hole he cannot reach and uses a stick to retrieve it. He takes out his camera and begins to explain what is happening and how he got there. Aron starts to despair and realizes that all his efforts to chip away at the rock have only trapped him further. Aron needs to cut through some tendons, but the knife is too damaged. He has to tear them instead. Aron carves his name and his birth and death dates into the canyon wall. He takes a straw, which is a rubber tube, and uses it as a tourniquet. Aron attempts to use his climbing ropes to remove the rock, but he realizes that the ropes are too elastic and that he would need a lot more gear. So he urinates into his bottle to have something to drink. After scratching at the rock so much, he cannot even cut his skin. After a few minutes of footage, he finally frees himself, bleeding and severely dehydrated. Make sure to subscribe to watch more movie summaries like this one. She really wants to talk to him, but he does not call her back. In February 2010, they have their first child, a son named Leo. Finally, he has a clear vision of his future son, a little boy sitting on a couch in the canyon. He has other hallucinations of his family sitting on a couch in front of him in the canyon. He misses them all, but he realizes he never fully opened up to them. He ties his arm in a sling and makes his way out of the canyon. Sure. Here is the translation of the text into English. He drinks as much as possible. The water is dirty, but he drinks until he sees a family of 3. He wedges a stone between himself and the rock and uses it to break the 2 bones in his arm. He starts having flashbacks about everything he wished he had done different in his life. He begins to delirious, believing that his entire life has led him to this rock and that the rock has been waiting for him since the beginning of the earth. He starts to run out of water and does not know what to do. He begins a little sketch with himself, pretending that he is being interviewed. He also continues to try to rehydrate his contact lenses, but his eyes are too irritated. He rappels down a cliff and finds water at the bottom. He says that whoever finds him can keep the camcorder if they send the recording to his parents, whose names and address he provides. He is collapsing. He explains that he would need 8 people because the rock is very heavy. He ends up settling for planting his arm and touching the bone, but he realizes he must first break them. He calls out with his last strength. He has no more water, but suddenly a huge storm rises and completely floods the canyon. He doesn't seem to lose hope. He talks to the boy and sees himself being a good father and raising his son. He jokes that he really should have told someone where he was going. He realizes that if he dies, he will miss his wedding. He notices a raven passing by and starts talking to him. He knows what he has to do. He realizes that if he doesn't show up for work today, his boss will notice. He realizes he needs water after exhausting his supplies. He also remembers a girl he was in love with whom he spent beautiful moments. He recalls the moment when he filmed his little sister playing the piano. He runs to his ex-girlfriend's place, but she slams the door in his face. He feels a gust of wind and sees a helicopter taking him to a hospital. He grips his arm and uses his Swiss knife to cut his skin, but he cannot cut anything in. He then uses his tiny Swiss knife to cut all the tissues around the break. He uses his climbing harness to sit and sleep, but he is in a very bad situation. They rush to him and give him fresh water, which he drinks. They broke up during a baseball game where she told him he would always be alone. They resurface to see his family sitting on the couch. The camera is very shaky. There is red everywhere, and Aron tries not to lose consciousness. The night is long and cold, and Aron keeps making jokes to the camera to keep his spirits up. Night falls, and Aron tries to sleep, but he is freezing. The noise is very loud and painful. Morning comes, and the screen shows that it's Sunday. The first flashback is from a few days ago when he decided to ignore his mother's phone call. She left a message, but he was getting ready and ignored it. The flood lifts the rock, and he manages to get out. But no bone loses its skin. But even if his boss calls the police, Aron won't be officially considered missing until 24 hours later. But suddenly, he wakes up and realizes it was all just a dream. Tuesday arrives. Thank you for watching. It is now Monday, and Aron begins to hallucinate. It is now Wednesday. We then find the real Aron with his wife, Jessica. Then another family arrives, and Aron starts losing consciousness. Sometime later, we see Aron swimming in a pool with his half-arm. He also regrets ignoring a call from his sister at the beginning of his hike. He says he'll always be with her and stops recording.